I just received today. Brazil.
Phil emceeing, amazing. But Brave CF 71, there's a lot of highlights, you know. I mean,
where do you begin?
Yeah.
Where do you begin? For me,
just tell me your thoughts, guys. I mean, there's so much to jump into that.
For me, personally, you know, Mahmoud Sebi, every time you see that guy, he's just blowing away his opponents. But not only that, he has that beautiful fusion of charisma and ability. You know, at the end of the day, sport is business as well. And you need to, as much as we love the purity of the sport and as much as we love the purity of mixed martial arts, there's also a business element. You need to have that X factor. You need to set yourself apart. Mahmoud Sebi does that beautifully, talks wonderfully, represents a country wonderfully, he backs it up. So again, and we spoke about it a little bit off camera. He's itching into that area of, you know, top 10 contendership. He called out Joyuton Lutterbach. But if I'm someone like Isa Isakov, if I'm someone like Michal Kotruta, if I'm someone like Ahmed Laban, and I'm seeing him call out one of the top dogs in the division, I'm saying no, me first. You have to prove yourself against like the elite of the elite competition. So mixing him in with someone like Ahmed Laban or Isa Isakov, someone that could potentially not necessarily nullify his wrestling, but keep up with that wrestling. Obviously, Isakov's wrestling is unreal. I think a fight like that could be really, really interesting, but so many possibilities in a stacked division.
Yeah, that's crazy. And also, I think a lot of people don't see it, but if you think about how can you cover that much distance when you shoot and take somebody down? I think we've seen that in the olden days when GSP used to cover that much distance when he takes down, you know, and you could be in whatever distance. You don't have to be, you know, we have this saying in MMA, right? You touch the guy, you can take him down, but you don't have to touch anymore when you have that skills and speed and explosiveness like Sebai. I mean, I didn't know where did he start the takedown, but I couldn't see it. It was like that.
Lightning quick. And, you know, he who controls the wrestling, you know, wrestling is king in mixed martial arts. He who controls the wrestling controls where the fight goes. And Kerrick, we talked about it. You see fighters sometimes who are elite level wrestlers. They're incredibly powerful, incredibly dynamic. When they start to really get settled in the striking, that power transfers. So they become these knockout artists, like guys like Dan Henderson, Johnny Hendricks. And now we're seeing that with Sabay. The power he can generate over short distances, like when he's in someone's guard, he's not even throwing big looping punches. They're like 1-inch punches, and they're knocking people out.
Right.
It's incredible. I'm really, really looking forward to seeing what he does next.
No, definitely. Do you have any thoughts on that fight?
Yeah. In boxing, as an amateur, if you find a good amateur prospect, they get an owner, and they give him tomato cans, 16, 17 fights in a row. It takes years to develop, even when you start, even if you're an Olympic level boxer, amateur, it takes years to develop that pro power. And what these guys are developing, it's a little bit hard to see, but once I try and describe it, hopefully people in Brave Nation can start noticing it. A high-level striker is completely relaxed and at the same time completely tense. They're moving like water, but if you touch them, their whole body is hard like iron, and that's where boxing power comes from. But a guy like Sabay, a wrestler at that level, his core strength is so extraordinary that he has a different kind of power. He's got a spring inside of his body, and he just has to let that spring go. And literally, I punched about 6-7 inches. In 8 inches, Sabay can put anyone to sleep, anybody.
And you're also seeing a mature Sebai in this fight when, you know if you've seen his past fights, you're always seeing him, he knows he's confident in his takedown, he goes explosive, get the guy down, and tries to ground and pound like a madman, and this time for him to be patient enough to wait for him to turn and give that back, that's someone who's now thinking and understanding mixed martial art much more.
And going back to the power that he's able to generate, I didn't realize just how hard he hit his opponent until after the fight, and I seen the hematoma on his
Right.
opponent's head. Like, that has to be what, like, it looked like he'd been hit with a baseball bat. It was like an egg on his head, and it might have been because of just how tight the squeeze was, and it made it pop a little bit. But that was borderline grotesque.
Yeah, that was that was a
nasty.
once a year exhibition
Yep.
of power at multiple levels. There was the power to touch his head and cause that hematoma, and then to take the back and that squeeze that he's got. Just he put a basketball on his head. I was watching it. I nearly had to close my eyes. But yeah, that is two demonstrations of his power, both as a striker and in that all important squeeze.
And Mahmoud Sebi is a guy who is a social media sensation.
Yep.
Now, speaking about one already established social media sensation, then to a younger fighter who went viral and will become a social media sensation, Hamzat Borsmaayev.
Wow.
What a debut. Especially coming in with that name alone, the weight of expectation is heavy on your shoulders. I had a really great conversation with our matchmaker Sam back in January. I believe it was January 2nd. I was calling fights out in Turkey. I'm seeing this guy, Hamzat Bors. I'm like, okay, Hamzat Bors 2-0. Okay, what's going on here? Did a little bit of research into him. Aesthetically, he looks like Chimaev. Aesthetically, he fights like him. Won that fight that I called by Darce. As soon as the fight was over, picked up my phone, was like, Sam, we need to check this guy out. He has the potential to be a superstar. Wasn't quite sure what was going to happen when you put him in with that elite level of fighter, but when he's fighting fighters on the global stage now, those elbows were vicious. And I think it's going to be a case of every time we see him inside the Brave Arena, he's going to fight a fighter that's another level up, but he will also raise his level. And what a debut in a global organization.
And it's crazy, right? I mean, you have those fights. We were talking about it before the fight, and while we were discussing and breaking down the fight, and we were saying that, okay, will he live up to the hype? You're carrying that thing that Gamzat, when he was fighting with Brave, he wasn't Gamzat Chimaev when he started, right? So he didn't have something where people are comparing him to.
Yeah.
But Gamzat Maev, they're already comparing him to Gamzat Chimaev, and that's something that he has to carry with him. Interesting in the post-fight interview that he said that I want to be as good or better, and that's his target. But at the same time, what are the chances for him to come to the fight, perform the way he performed, drops the guy with the elbow, but still also have that hype of people catching up to that viral moment of seeing. A lot of people thought that Gamzat is back to Brave. A lot of people, a lot of MMA fans were like, "Oh, we didn't know that Gamzat was fighting today." So there's different things that was going on for that fight, apart from him just winning it in a spectacular fashion. But at the same time, there's also a huge conversation going on about were those elbows legal. Yeah. What did you think about those elbows? Like, I still couldn't watch the fight afterwards. But if you have, did you get to watch the fight after?
Yep. At the time, I called them legal, and I was adamant. And sometimes when you're adamant about something like that, you think to yourself, "Oh, am I going to have to make a public apology here?" But watching it back, if you look at the trajectory of the elbow, the 12-6 elbow comes straight down.
Right.
These were coming at a sideward trajectory. Even the one that people are considering the most contentious did come at a sideward trajectory. Maybe we'll call it an 11-7 elbow, and that's how much the margin for error is there. It was coming at that angle. Some people were saying about a back fist to a hammer fist to the back of the head. If you look at that, yes, he throws the hammer fist, but his opponent's already on the ground. It doesn't land. So I think if you look at it, two things. One, incredible shot selection from Hamzat, and two, incredible officiating from Aaron Wallace.
True.
Yeah, the two things I could say about that are, one, and I'll be blunt, it's a BS rule. That 12-6 rule came from when the unified rules were codified in 2001 in New Jersey. And there was a boxing commissioner who had watched a martial arts demonstration called the forget the name of it. He'd watched it on television, and he saw a guy breaking huge blocks of ice with a downward elbow. Now that's BS too. What they do is they take ice, they cut it, they put water on it, and they put it together. It's all BS. So it was a BS demonstration of kind of a BS martial art. And then this
Controversial.
commissioner, then this commissioner who was great at boxing but didn't understand mixed martial arts saw it and was like, "You can't have elbows." And so John McCarthy, smart guy, said, "Yeah, we'll block all elbows. These are elbows and these are forearms. Can we allow forearms?" The commissioner's like, "Sure, yeah, forearms are okay. Forearms are okay, but no elbows." So that's the origin of that 12-6 thing. So it wasn't like he gouged his eye or he bit him or kicked him in the middle. He just did an elbow, and it was not 12-6. I was watching it live. I've watched it on replay 15 times now, and it came in at an angle. So I'm glad there's controversy. They're talking about it. As long as they spell his name right, great. But it was not an illegal move.
That 12-6 elbow we're talking about, so that's standing. So it's coming down 12-6. If I'm on my back and a fighter's inside my guard,
Right.
and I'm throwing an elbow like this,
That's 3-9. Yeah.
yeah, that's a perfectly legal elbow. So I can throw this elbow if I'm on my back. But if I'm standing, I can't throw this elbow.
Yeah.
You know, and at the end of the day, people are saying it's a dangerous shot to throw. You're fighting another man within the confines of a cage. Every shot you're throwing should be a dangerous shot to throw.
Absolutely.
So like you say, with that ruling with a 12-6, eventually conventional wisdom should dictate that gets changed.
But as a fighter as well, I could be wrong here, but I always felt like the 12-6 elbow is the weakest elbow because it has the least body weight on it. If I was mounting a guy on the guard, I would never try to throw a 12-6 elbow. I would always have body weight and my body gravity with every other elbow other than 12-6.
It's just physics. Yeah, strange rule, but at the end of the day, a little bit of controversy is not bad for the likes of social media, for a gentleman's profile, and everything worked out all right in the end.
But that's the thing, right? Like that's what I was saying. Like that fight, he had everything at the same time, and you can't make that up. And when you have all the effects, that's when you create a media superstar, you know, and that's what's happening to Gamzat.
It was a perfect storm, wasn't it?
True.
Yeah, you had the name, the hype, the little bit of potential controversy, the fight ending finish. It had everything. And like I say, I think we're going to see progression every time he's inside the Brave Arena. We're going to see a higher level of opponent each time, and without putting too much pressure on the young man's shoulders, there is something special, and maybe lightning does strike twice.
Sure, and I really think that everybody who's watched and who's talking about him, they just want to see him back as soon as possible, you know?
Yeah.
They just want to see him fight again immediately. And that's the, I think that's going to be, it's going to be an interesting time with Brave for him. I'm excited to see him back in the cage. But that's the thing, right? Like, I mean, you look at Brave 71, we've seen the wrestling of Sebai, but also at the same time, you see the high-level explosive wrestling of Sebai, and then you're seeing Ramzan Gitinov and his grappling skills. I mean, that's not, I have nothing to say about it.
With 30, he's currently riding
32?
a 32 fight win streak, pro and amateur combined, the most successful athlete in the history of amateur mixed martial arts. Sky's the limit for this guy. Again, that was the second professional fight. So calm, so assured, so polished, speaks great English as well. People don't often take into account how much of a factor that can be in the meteoric rise of a fighter. If they can connect with the audience, he has all the potential tools to be a real superstar.
And that's what we were talking before the event. And I was saying that what really impressed me was that 1.5 year or 1 year layoff that he had after he had the fractured skull, and then how fast did he adapt to learning striking and how good he became at striking. He's one of the intelligent athletes that can actually learn. And it was not just, and I always thought it was just the skills and the training because of the passion, but when you see him speak English, the first time I met him, he didn't speak a word of English, you know, and he just knew Ramzan and thank you. That was the only two words, right? But then now he's there. He was having the whole conversation with you in English.
Yeah, it was incredible. And like I say, that's one of those factors, like again with character and again with X Factor, that will take him to the next level. But what do you do with a fighter like Gitinov now? Because at 2-0, there's not a lot of people with a 2-0, 3-0, 4-0 record that are going to be putting their hand up to fight this guy.
No.
He may be forced to take not just that next step up in level, that second or third in one go.
I feel like, for me, when I look at his skills, I think that he's right now up there to compete against anyone. I just don't feel like I know the pro level is different. The experience might be different from the amateur. A lot of hype behind this, a lot of media work to be done. I don't know how much toll that takes on him. It doesn't look like it affected him at all from the last fight, but I think he's ready to go up there and fight the top 10 or top 5 event.
I think he is, but I'll take the opposite side in terms of finding opponents for him. I think he's one of those fights where there's nothing to lose. And I think, given that his background, he's been a pro for such a short period of time, I think if you're a fighter who's 2-0, 3-0, 4-0, you believe in your elbows, you believe in your knees, you might try and headbutt a little bit or rough them up inside. I could absolutely see people at that level. And I said, they got nothing to lose. They lose. It's not going to hurt their career. I can see them believing that they can beat him. Can they? No. But I can absolutely see people believing that if they just get in there and rough him up, he shoots, they catch him with a knee to the face, which he's not used to. They grind the glove into his eye, they land a couple of elbows. Maybe at that point you get a different guy. So I think we'll be able to find opponents for him, but they will be very brave people.
Oh, definitely. And that's, I think you're right on that one. I think that there are some guys, like I always mention about Khabib, similarly, that you don't really understand what you're looking at until your body touches his, and then you feel that strength, and you're like,
I've made a terrible mistake.
Yeah, you know, it looks so much better on television while I was preparing for the fight than what I'm feeling right now. What is this, you know? So I think that's the crazy thing, and that's similar. I always respect GSP. Always, he's been one of my favorite MMA athletes, you know, because again, he looks different when he fights, and you feel like, you know what, you know, he's a smart guy. Great IQ, but I think I'm not scared of him, you know? I don't have the fear for him. And then there's nothing you can do because he just knows you better than you do. And I think what we're seeing today, I mean, we don't have to predict, but because Ramzan has actually done that, he's shown what he's done in the amateur level that you can't compare. And I don't think it's going to be easy to beat his record as well, but now he's in the pro level. I generally feel what we're going to see more when he's fighting at the pro level is that we're actually going to see, if GSP and Khabib had a baby, that's Ramzan Gitanov.
The key word you used there was athlete, not fighter. And I think that in the modern era of mixed martial arts is the change we're seeing. Someone's not just an MMA fighter, they're an MMA athlete. Their approach to the game is more cerebral. It's not just a case of going in, throwing big shots and hoping for the best. There's data that needs to be downloaded. There's research that needs to be done. There is that cerebral approach that needs to be taken, and Gitanov is a wonderful exponent of that.
And do you feel like, Craig, from the times we used to watch MMA in the early days when it was karate, was taekwondo, was boxing, was kickboxing, Muay Thai, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, and I think that the mind games at that time was much more simpler, because today the fight is literally when you have two guys from MMA background like Ramzan or Muhammad Makai, when they're competing, I think there's more mental warfare today to try to understand what's going to be the game plan than it used to be before. Do you feel like you have to fight IQ is very important today than before?
I do, but there's something even behind that didn't used to exist. You can use military, the approach that the world takes to military affairs as a parallel. We used to be dealing with technique. We originally, it was just techniques that we started with in '93. You just had to learn how to do a choke. And then we started getting into strategies like, do you beat the guy up? And then do you do a choke? But at the highest level of military thinking, there's all the things that are behind it. And with a guy like him, you've got a massive team behind him. You're not just fighting one guy. You're fighting not just a team behind him, but you're fighting an entire amateur system that built him up to where it was. So it's not just fighting a man versus a man. When you have somebody who's at that level, you're fighting a history that cannot be duplicated, working through IMAF. And now with his team behind him, you're fighting... there's very few teams in the world that can bring what his team brings. And very, very few, a handful. So it's no longer just fighting man versus man. You're now fighting everything that's hidden behind that guy. And it's a tall order to overcome. Really impossible in most cases.
Just before we go into Brave CF 72, I have to say, I said so, main event of Brave CF 71, I knew we're going to get something special. What a fight. What a fight.
take it away, because you. There's a thing, Brave Nation. There's a thing when you're commentating, you get chills sometimes. Just something exciting. Literally, there's a hot arena. There's television lights. It's I don't know how many degrees centigrade, over 100 Fahrenheit. You're sweating bullets, and all of a sudden you get chills. And in that fight, the chills just lasted and lasted and lasted and lasted for me. And how'd they feel for you?
Omar Solomonov is, I like to call him an unorthodox jukebox. You know, he's awkward, he's gangly, he looks like he's not coordinated, but when he gets in there, things happen. And he's this wonderful mixture of technical nuance and then madness. Because he throws, coming from that southpaw position, he pops off a fantastic 1-2. Next thing, he's throwing shots from outside the cage. And then when he was in the rear naked choke position 3 times, didn't put his hooks in, didn't feel like he needed it. He was that confident with it. That's no one's teaching that. You know, on the face of it, that's terrible technique. But he was very close a couple of times with it. And he genuinely feels, speaking to him in the cage afterwards, he doesn't care who wins the main event at Brave 72. All he cares about is his shot, his opportunity. That is an ironclad mindset. But Keurig, I want to ask you, how do you feel he matches up against our 2 combatants who are taking part in the main event on Friday night at Brave CF 72, Roman Bogatov and Nemat Abrashitov? Who do you think Omar Solomonov secretly would prefer to fight?
I think Bogatov is the tougher fight for him. I don't believe he was, I know it was a stone fact in my heart, he was not lying when he said that to you. Yeah. He absolutely, if you put Godzilla in there, he's like, yeah, I can choke him a little bit and all that internal fire will explode. But I do think at the technical level, speaking very, very broadly, just every aspect of the sport, every leg lock, every arm lock, every submission, every takedown, every setup, single, double, high cross, everything. He's just a little bit better. And so the guy that I think he does not want to fight is the champ. And what have we had now? We had a champ, defended successfully once, had a featherweight. Had a champ, defended successfully once. I think we got a champ, and I think he's going to defend it successfully once.
Interesting. I think both guys are incredibly dangerous. I also like the element of, you have a title fight against a very dangerous opponent, but you also know that there is a boogeyman. You also know there is a Baba Yaga in the background, just watching, waiting, dissecting, downloading what you're doing. Because Omar Solomonov now has the opportunity to be there front and center and to see how both of these fighters compete. Take that away, he knows in 3, 4, 5 months that he will get his shot. So I think the way that these fights have unfolded, Omar Solomonov is at a distinct advantage.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I also think that with Roman Bogatov, you're not trying to figure out something you cannot understand, right? I mean, Roman Bogatov is very clear, very straightforward. You know what you're going to get from him, and come and try to stop me. I mean, that
illustrates how good he is at it.
Absolutely.
We know what he's going to do.
Absolutely.
He's able to accomplish it. The fight with Tae-Kyun Kim was an absolute war. He earned every bit of that belt, but again, showing that Tae-Kyun Kim's a very intelligent fighter in his own right. He knew exactly what Roman Bogatov was going to do. He knew the game plan. But how do you stop a force of nature from doing what he is built to do?
Yeah, as far as the Tae-Kyun Kim fight went, it was very close on the judges' scorecards.
I think the right decision was made at the end of the day.
Yeah, the right decision was made at the end of the day. And in my heart of hearts, you just throw out all the ring generalship, effective aggressiveness, blah, blah, blah. Just throw it all out. Who hurt who more? And by that one, it was a really obvious fight for me. Was it close? Yes, but who hurt who more? The champ.
And Bogatov, we talk again about mindset. Roman Bogatov has an ironclad mindset. This is a guy who at 7 years old fell off a cliff, spent 6 months in hospital, had to learn to walk again, and then decided to start freestyle wrestling. One of the toughest combat sports in the world. So he is by no means going to be fazed by Omar Solomonov, because he's looked death right in the face. Yeah. He'll have no issue taking the sting out of the tail of a scorpion.
And that's when you see him fight. Even with Tae-Kyun Kim, those times where you feel like anybody else would have broken mentally, and then you're like, not that Roman Bogatov is not breaking mentally after all that trying to grapple with the guy, and he's standing up and he's stopping your takedowns. But not only that, he's breaking down the sense that, okay, I think I'm failing. On the other hand, he makes sure it's the opponent that breaks mentally, you know. So it's like he's far ahead of even thinking about if I would break mentally, you know, or if I would give up. And I think the story makes a lot of sense of why and where he comes from for how he fights the way he fights. But the only way I feel that if you have to stop him, then you need a hands that can put him to sleep and not move, you know. And I think that's where Namath is so dangerous when it comes to the power he has, the strength he has, you know. And we've seen him do that in Brave Combat Federation, and that's, I think, the most scariest part for Roman Bogatov when he's competing with Namath for the title.
Yeah. Now, we're speaking a lot, we're waxing lyrical about Roman Bogatov because he is the champion. He deserves to get that shine. But Namath Abrashidov, I think 18 wins as a professional, currently riding a 6-fight win streak, coming off a huge TKO victory over Marco Vinicius Costa. So he, again, rightfully earns his right. And I don't think Roman Bogatov has ever fought anyone quite like Namath Abrashidov, anybody with that dangerous style, as dangerous standing as he is on the ground. 7 wins by KO or TKO, and even split of 7 wins via submission. So potentially the most well-rounded mixed martial arts athlete that Bogatov has faced.